Well, I think I heard about it initially through a business mentor of mine, probably 15, 20 years ago in Vancouver, who runs a financial planning business. And he implemented some form of that a long time ago, and his business has just grown exponentially. And even though he owns much less of the business than he once does, his equity is worth way more than it was because the business has just grown so much. And I always just thought that made a lot of sense. So I think there was a seed planted a long time ago. I wasn't in a position at that time where I was running a business or in a position to sort of make those kinds of changes where I was working. But I think as I got into landscape, it was always sort of something that I thought would be awesome to do, but I think I was stuck in the how with things like the seasonality of our work and also the fact I really had no facility to pull all of my people together in any kind of room because we just worked outside. We had no office, we had no trailer, we had nothing for many years. So I think, anyways, that was the paralysis. That was the reason I didn't do anything. And then I read Great Game of Business maybe 3, 4 years ago, and I'm like, that's awesome. Then I read the other books, and I think through just probably social media or LMN or something, I stumbled across Ryan at one point and knew of him for a few years. I probably, probably signed up for his newsletter. And then last year, through a series of events, I'm just like, we've had a good year. There's some cash in the bank. I want to invest. I feel ready to at least explore this in a meaningful way. And I reached out to my values are very much aligned with being as transparent as we possibly can in our culture and to not disclose data about, whether it's financial data or other to my staff just seems like a missed opportunity and also just like not the right way to do it based on who I am and how I like to operate. Um, and I also caught wind over the years of people just making stuff up. So, for example, um, I'd show up on a job site, maybe on the other side of a bush from someone. This happened one time, and I heard someone saying, "I heard Adam's charging $65 an hour for us mowing this lawn, and I'm making $22 an hour. That means he's putting $40 an hour in his pocket on my back." So I hear them say that. I'm like, okay, well, clearly that's wrong, but they don't know that because no one's told them. They don't understand that there are many, many other costs associated, not just with the $22 an hour that they are paid on top of that, but also just to run the business. And the 65 is not like, it's not all gravy. Actually, the gravy at the end is a very small fraction of that. Well, the best way to eliminate people making stuff up is to teach them about how the money flows through the business. And if I could do that, then there's potentially a whole host of other things that could come up and be challenging with the disclosure of the information, but I'd
Mhm.
rather deal with that than the unknown. And I have one more point, and that's just that I felt like there was an opportunity to help people better connect what they did every day to the impact on the business. Um, it's helped just to keep me interested and engaged and
Mm.
inspired, sort of a new challenge on how to continue to align the operations of the business with my values and the values that I believe are true to our core team. We killed our numbers. Like, I'm stunned a little bit at how well we did. And I don't think it's just because of Great Game. I don't know what influence it had on that because we weren't really tracking drivers in any kind of meaningful way. I just know that we did it and we had a great year. And there's got to be some causality there. But I would say that there's certainly some meaningful believers in the business, and they are, they're advocates, and um, And I think, how, their understanding of how the business works, I think it probably just makes their jobs more meaningful to be better connected to the big picture. Know that the business can be a tool to get people a leg up, financially, and just as far as like, acumen around how things work. Like if somebody came to me in a year or two and said, "Hey, Adam, I want to start my own business." And even if it was competitive with me, if it was a friendly thing and I could help them, and I knew that some of their confidence or what they're going into that with was based on some of the things they pulled from us, like I would find that gratifying.
Mhm.
That this, what we're doing here could propel someone to take some entrepreneurial risks on their own, or to take some entrepreneurial risks within Pika, sort of like you mentioned with some of your folks maybe getting into snow clearing. Like that's rewarding and exciting and interesting to me. Um, I think just knowing he's always there and willing to kind of roll up his sleeves and just like talk things through and provide experience and perspective on things is probably what it is. Like I would say that's sort of like moral support and availability is where I found the most value versus like the, boots on the ground, task based, this is how you do it, teaching kind of stuff. Um, he's just been very supportive
Mhm.
and encouraging, and he's passionate about this stuff more so than I probably ever will be, just the way he's wired. Well, I think probably the simple answer is just, Ryan harping on we versus I, and like correcting me when I talk, because it has been me and I for the first 5 years,
Right.
and really just pushing me to change how I think about it and change how I talk about it. Um, and feel free to not just delegate, but to create opportunities and expect people to kind of step up and take ownership of it and then just let them go. And that's not easy for me because I'm in the details and I like being in the details, and I it takes me time to trust that people can do it well. Um, but I know that I'm I can be a bottleneck in the business and to people's individual growth if I sort of stick to that spot. So I think it's just helped me to be reminded that I need to continue to push in that direction. And but my objective is really to grow it and to create opportunities for my key people to take on more, and for me to do somewhat less, but for me to still work all the time in the business where I add the
Mhm.
most value.
I noticed a relaxation in you when you started to answer that question. It was like you sort of recognized that there was having that ability to share with your team is and trust your team that there's this taking the stress off of you. Is that
Yeah, and I may not use the word stress, but it's like it's freeing and it's encouraging, I guess. Like to know that in some cases I don't have to do anything, and that um yeah, it's just like it's really it's freeing.
now? I understand that you've been part of a landscaping peer group for quite a while now. What in particular were you missing that had you looking for more?
No one in that peer group had implemented anything that aligned with my values. And to say more about that, there were lots of like amongst the dozen or so businesses that I interact with and have a lot of interaction with and information sharing. And I know, we share our numbers and financial things and benchmark our numbers against each other. Like there's a lot of good data there on how everyone runs their business. Um, but most of them are performance based on an individual or group level incentives and or commissions. And I've just never wished to be in or run a business like that. And not because I think it's necessarily bad, and not that it's necessarily showing up in a bad way for them. But I want us all pulling in the same direction. I want everybody focused on the same goal. And I want people to act like act like they're a team and not competing against each other.
Mhm.
And some of these organizations with sales guys, like they've got, they have sales commissions and then they get paid a commission, but then the production crew doesn't do a good job, and then they're mad at the production crew because they should have got it done in hours, and like the accountability loop is tricky, but they're the one that got rewarded. But now the owner's pissed off that he paid out a commission because the job didn't actually make any money, even though he sold it and he got paid a commission on the sales. Then they're tweaking it. It's like, well, maybe it should be on gross profit, and there should be some joint accountability there. Like it just gets really complicated, and I think
Yeah.
really individualistic. So I think what I was missing was the demonstration that a landscape business who runs seasonally and has very little or no revenue in the winter and has a very seasonal workforce that's kind of turning over quite a bit can actually do this, as Jack Stack talked about, because you and have very similar worlds, and that like we start hard in the spring, we've got new staff every spring, and then at the end of the year we wrap up and we kind of shut things down, and we got no revenue, but we got lots of bills, and some staff leave, and it takes time to invest in everybody to bring them up to speed so they understand what we're talking about. Is it worth it if someone's just going to stick around for a year? Because I will always have staff like that in a transient resort town. Like that's just going to
Mhm.
be my reality. Um, so I think that was the big thing I was missing, is like who else has done this with some of these issues that I uniquely have in my whistler world.
Mhm. And so the result is, can a
It worked.
landscaping company, it worked?
Yeah, like I did a payout after Q2 and I did a payout after Q3, and I forecasted Q4 because my costs are fairly predictable over the winter. And I'm like, all that stuff seemed very difficult for me to solve on my own. And I think Creative Roots example and Ryan's guidance helped me see that those things were possible. Um, and that was extremely valuable for me.